The aftermath of this meeting was swift and brutal. Mom immediately cut off all contact with Claire, saying she was ashamed to have raised such a monster. Our aunts and uncles, who had been defending Claire for months, were mortified by their role in attacking me based on her lies. My Aunt Carol apologized tearfully. "Rachel, I'm so sorry we believed Claire's lies. We should have known you would never manipulate your father. Please forgive us for doubting you." But the damage to our family relationships was irreversible. The trust that had held our family together for generations was completely shattered. Claire's husband David filed for divorce within a week of learning about her crimes, saying he couldn't be married to someone who would steal from her own father and lie to her entire family. Claire's children, my nieces and nephew who I'd watched grow up, were devastated to learn that their mother was a criminal who had been planning to kill their grandfather. Her oldest daughter, Emma, who was 19, called me to apologize for the cruel things she'd said to me based on her mother's lies. "Aunt Rachel, I'm so sorry I believed Mom when she said you were greedy and manipulative. I should have known you would never do anything to hurt Grandpa. Mom destroyed our whole family with her lies." 2 days after the family meeting, Claire was arrested at her house in front of her neighbors and remaining friends. The local newspaper covered her arrest with the headline, "Local real estate agent charged with stealing from dying father." Claire's real estate career was immediately destroyed, her brokerage fired her, and her real estate license was suspended, pending the outcome of her criminal case. The trial lasted 3 weeks and was covered extensively by local media. The evidence against Claire was overwhelming: bank records, security footage, forged documents, recorded conversations, and expert testimony all proved her guilt beyond any doubt. Claire was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 8 years in prison plus restitution of $125,000 to Dad's estate. The judge called Claire's crimes a betrayal of the most sacred family bonds and said her actions were particularly heinous because they targeted a vulnerable elderly man who trusted her completely. Today, 15 months after Dad's death, I've been completely vindicated in the eyes of our family and community. The inheritance that Claire tried to steal through lies and manipulation has allowed me to honor Dad's memory in ways he would have been proud of. I've established a scholarship fund in Dad's name that helps young people from our hometown attend college. I've also started a foundation that educates families about elder financial abuse and provides resources for people who suspect their elderly relatives are being exploited. Most importantly, I've learned that some family members will literally try to kill you for money, and that sometimes the people who seem the most trustworthy are actually the most dangerous. Claire is currently serving her prison sentence and has lost everything: her marriage, her children's respect, her career, her reputation, and her freedom. She occasionally sends letters from prison asking for forgiveness, but neither I nor any other family member responds. As for our family, we're slowly rebuilding relationships based on honesty and genuine care rather than the manipulative dynamics that Claire had created. Mom and I have reconciled, and she's repeatedly apologized for believing Claire's lies about me. "I should have known that you would never manipulate your father," Mom told me recently. "You were always the honest one, and Claire was always the one who would say whatever she thought people wanted to hear." I've learned that sometimes the most devastating betrayals come from the people closest to you, and that greed can turn even the most perfect family member into a monster. Claire thought she could steal Dad's money, destroy my reputation, and turn our family against me through lies and manipulation. Instead, her crimes destroyed her own life while proving that Dad's instincts about my character were absolutely correct. That's how you handle a sibling who tries to steal your inheritance, y'all. You investigate, you gather evidence, and you expose the truth no matter how painful it is. Sometimes justice takes time, but it always comes for people who prey on their own family members. And beautiful souls, if this story resonated with you, if you've dealt with toxic family members or inheritance disputes in your own life, I want you to know that you're not alone. There are so many of us who've had to fight for justice against people who were supposed to love and protect us. I share these stories because I believe that sunlight is the best disinfectant, and when we expose the tactics that manipulators use, we can better protect ourselves and our loved ones. If you want to hear more stories like this, more tales of family betrayal, financial fraud, and ultimate justice, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I post new revenge stories every week, and trust me, y'all are not ready for some of the wild family drama I have coming up. Your support means everything to me, gorgeous souls. Every like, every comment, every share helps me reach more people who need to hear these stories. Because sometimes, knowing that someone else stood up to a family bully and won is exactly the inspiration we need to find our own strength. So smash that subscribe button, leave me a comment telling me about your own experiences with toxic family members, and let's build a community of people who refuse to be victims. Together, we're stronger than any manipulator who tries to bring us down. I'll see you beautiful souls in the next story, and remember, blood doesn't make family. Loyalty does, and you have every right to protect yourself from people who would harm you, even if they share your DNA. But the theft was just the beginning of what Marcus uncovered. Marcus discovered that Claire had been pressuring Dad to make changes to his will and estate planning documents. We found drafts of multiple wills in Dad's papers, showing that he'd been revising his inheritance plans several times during his final year. Most significantly, Marcus found evidence that Claire had been forging Dad's signature on financial documents. Claire had created fake power of attorney documents that gave her access to Dad's investment accounts. She'd also forged Dad's signature on documents that attempted to transfer ownership of some of his business assets to her name. A handwriting expert confirmed that multiple documents in Dad's file contained forged signatures that perfectly matched Claire's writing style when she was trying to mimic Dad's handwriting. Claire had been planning to steal Dad's entire estate, but Dad had discovered her scheme and changed his will to protect his assets from her theft. Marcus's investigation also revealed that Claire had been trying to find people who would testify that Dad was mentally incompetent when he made his final will. We found text messages between Claire and several of Dad's former caregivers where she was offering them money to claim that Dad had been confused and easily manipulated during his final months. One caregiver, Maria Santos, had actually recorded a phone conversation where Claire offered her $5,000 to sign a statement saying that Dad didn't understand his financial decisions. Claire kept calling me and asking me to lie about your father's mental state, Maria told Marcus. She wanted me to say he was confused and that someone was manipulating him. But your father was sharp as a tack until the day he died. Claire had been planning to use these false testimonies to contest Dad's will and claim that he was mentally incompetent when he left me the majority of his estate. Marcus also discovered that Claire had been secretly recording her conversations with Dad, trying to capture moments when he seemed tired or confused that she could use as evidence of his mental decline. But the most shocking discovery was that Claire had been planning an insurance fraud scheme that would have netted her hundreds of thousands of dollars. Claire had convinced Dad to increase his life insurance coverage during his final year, claiming it was necessary to protect the family's financial security. But Claire had also been researching Dad's medical conditions and had been encouraging him to avoid certain treatments that might have extended his life. Marcus found Google searches on Claire's computer for phrases like life expectancy, heart disease, and how to speed up natural death. Most disturbing, we found evidence that Claire had been giving Dad incorrect information about his medications, telling him that certain heart medications were optional when they were actually critical for his survival. A cardiologist who reviewed Dad's medical records confirmed that Dad's heart attack might have been preventable if he'd been taking all of his prescribed medications correctly. Claire had essentially been slowly killing our father while stealing his money and planning to contest his will. Armed with all this evidence, Marcus and I took our findings to the district attorney's office. The prosecutor, Linda Chen, was horrified by the scope of Claire's crimes against our father. This isn't just inheritance fraud, Linda told us. We're looking at elder abuse, document forgery, insurance fraud, and potentially negligent homicide. Linda agreed to open a criminal investigation into Claire's actions, and within 2 weeks, search warrants were issued for Claire's home, car, and computer. The search revealed even more evidence of Claire's crimes, including additional forged documents, stolen cash hidden in her house, and detailed plans for contesting Dad's will using fabricated evidence. Linda filed formal charges against Claire for elder financial abuse, stealing $125,000, document forgery, multiple counts, insurance fraud, attempting to accelerate Dad's death, witness tampering, bribing caregivers to lie, Conspiracy to commit fraud, the will contest scheme. Claire was facing up to 15 years in prison if convicted on all charges. Gorgeous souls, the moment when I revealed Claire's crimes to our family was both the most satisfying and the most heartbreaking experience of my life. Because while I was finally able to prove my innocence, I was also destroying the image of the sister that everyone had loved and trusted for 42 years. I decided to gather the entire family together to reveal the truth about Claire's crimes before her arrest became public knowledge. I organized a family meeting at Mom's house, inviting all the relatives who had turned against me based on Claire's lies, Mom, our aunts and uncles, and several cousins who had been most vocal about their disappointment in my agreed. I told everyone that I had important information to share about Dad's estate and that I wanted to clear up the misunderstandings that had been causing so much family conflict. Claire attended the meeting, confident that she was about to watch me finally confess to manipulating Dad and agree to share the inheritance more fairly. "I'm so glad you're finally ready to do the right thing, Rachel," Claire said as everyone gathered in Mom's living room. "Our family has been through enough pain, and it's time to put Dad's wishes first." But I had a very different agenda for this meeting. I started by addressing the family's concerns about my inheritance directly. "I know that many of you believe I manipulated Dad into leaving me more money than Claire, and I understand why Claire's version of events seemed believable. But I've spent the last 3 months investigating what really happened with Dad's estate, and what I discovered is going to shock all of you." I pulled out the bank records showing the $125,000 in unauthorized withdrawals. These are Dad's bank statements from his final year. As you can see, someone was systematically stealing money from his accounts while he was sick and vulnerable. I handed the statements to my Aunt Carol, who had been one of Claire's most vocal supporters. Carol's face went white as she reviewed the withdrawal amounts and dates. "Rachel, this shows thousands of dollars being taken every month. Who was doing this?" "The security camera footage from the banks shows that Claire was making these withdrawals using Dad's debit card." I played the bank security videos on my laptop, clearly showing Claire at various ATMs and bank counters, withdrawing large amounts of cash from Dad's accounts. The room erupted in shocked gasps and angry murmurs. Claire's face turned red, but she tried to maintain her composure. "I was withdrawing that money for Dad's medical expenses and household needs," Claire claimed. "He asked me to help him manage his finances." "Actually, Claire," I continued, "Dad's medical expenses were covered by insurance, and his household expenses were less than $2,000 per month. You stole over $125,000 from a dying man." Then I revealed the forged documents that Marcus had discovered. But the theft was just the beginning. Claire also forged Dad's signature on multiple legal documents, including fake power of attorney papers that gave her access to his investment accounts. I showed the family the handwriting analysis that proved Claire had been forging Dad's signature. Mom started crying as she realized the extent of Claire's deception. "Claire, how could you do this to your own father?" Claire finally started to panic as she realized that her crimes were being exposed in front of the entire family. "You don't understand," Claire said desperately. "Dad was confused and making bad decisions. I was trying to protect the family's financial future. Rachel was manipulating him, and I had to do something to stop her. Actually, Claire, I have recorded evidence of you trying to bribe Dad's caregivers to lie about his mental state so you could contest his will." I played the recording of Claire offering Maria Santos $5,000 to falsely claim that Dad was mentally incompetent. The family listened in horror as they heard Claire's voice clearly attempting to suborn perjury and defame Dad's memory. But the most devastating revelation was yet to come. Claire wasn't just stealing Dad's money and forging documents. She was also trying to speed up his death to collect his life insurance money sooner. I showed the family the evidence of Claire's internet searches about Dad's life expectancy and her sabotage of his medication regimen. A cardiologist has reviewed Dad's medical records and confirmed that his heart attack might have been preventable if he'd been taking all his medications correctly. Claire was giving him wrong information about which medications were necessary. The silence in the room was deafening. Everyone was staring at Claire with expressions of horror and disgust. My Uncle Frank, who had been one of Claire's strongest supporters, spoke up with revulsion in his voice. "Claire, are you telling us that you were trying to kill your own father for insurance money?" Claire broke down completely. I wasn't trying to kill him. I needed the money. David lost his job last year, and we're behind on our mortgage. The kids need college money. I was just trying to secure our family's future. By killing Dad and framing me for manipulating him? I asked. By destroying our entire family with lies and theft? Mr. Peterson calmly explained that the will was properly executed, witnessed, and legally binding. He also mentioned that Dad had updated his will just 6 months before his death, indicating that these were his final wishes. But Claire was not accepting this news quietly. This is ridiculous, Claire continued. Rachel lives in Seattle. She doesn't need this money. I have 3 children to put through college. I've been taking care of our parents for years. Dad must have been confused when he made these changes. Claire then turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before, pure anger and resentment. Rachel, you know this isn't what Dad really wanted. You need to do the right thing and share this inheritance equally. I shouldn't have to ask you to be fair to your own family. I was completely overwhelmed by Claire's reaction and the entire situation. Claire, I had no idea Dad was planning to leave me this much money. I'm just as surprised as you are. Surprised? Claire laughed bitterly. Or did you manipulate him during those private conversations you two had? Did you convince him that I didn't deserve his money? I was hurt and shocked by Claire's accusation. I never talked to Dad about money or inheritance. We talked about life, about his business, about his memories. I would never manipulate him. But Claire was just getting started with her attacks on my character. Over the next few days, Claire launched a systematic campaign to turn our entire family against me. She started by calling our mother and painting my inheritance as evidence of my greed and manipulation. Mom, don't you think it's suspicious that Rachel suddenly started visiting Dad more often in his final year, and then mysteriously ends up with most of his money? Claire would say. I think Rachel took advantage of Dad's declining health to influence his decisions. She probably convinced him that I didn't need the money because David and I have good jobs. Claire also began calling our aunts, uncles, and cousins with her version of events. I'm so hurt by what Rachel has done to our family, Claire would tell them. Dad always intended for his estate to be divided equally, but Rachel manipulated him into changing his will. Now she's refusing to do the right thing and share the inheritance fairly. Claire's story was compelling because it fit with people's preconceptions about our family roles. Everyone knew Claire as the devoted daughter who'd sacrificed for the family, while I was seen as the career-focused daughter who'd moved away and only visited occasionally. Within a week of the will reading, I started receiving calls from family members expressing their disappointment in my selfish behavior. My Aunt Carol called to say, Rachel, I'm shocked that you're keeping all that money when Claire has been such a devoted daughter. Your father would be ashamed of your greed. My cousin Mike, who'd always been close to Claire, sent me a text message saying, I never thought you were the type of person who would steal from your own family. Claire deserves better than this. But Claire wasn't just turning family members against me, she was also destroying my reputation in our hometown community. Claire began telling her friends, neighbors, and colleagues about how I'd stolen the family inheritance through manipulation and greed. She'd share her story at the grocery store, at her children's school events, and at church gatherings, always presenting herself as the victim of my selfishness. I spent years taking care of my father, and my sister swooped in at the last minute to manipulate him into leaving her everything, Claire would say. I'm trying to keep our family together, but Rachel is choosing money over family relationships. Claire's version of events spread quickly through our small town, and soon I was receiving cold treatment from people who'd known me since childhood. When I'd visit Mom, neighbors would give me hostile looks or turn away when they saw me coming. The local coffee shop where I'd always been welcomed as Robert's daughter suddenly had staff who were noticeably less friendly. Claire had effectively made me a pariah in my own hometown. But the most devastating part of Claire's manipulation campaign was how she turned our mother against me. Mom had initially been supportive of Dad's will, saying things like, your father was always smart with money. If he left Rachel more, he must have had good reasons. But after weeks of Claire's daily conversations about my manipulation and greed, Mom's attitude toward me completely changed. During one particularly painful phone call, Mom said, Rachel, I've been thinking about everything Claire has told me, and I'm starting to believe that you did something wrong here. Claire has been such a devoted daughter, and she's struggling financially with the kids' college expenses. Meanwhile, you're single with no children and a high-paying job. Don't you think you should share the inheritance more fairly? When I tried to explain that I'd never manipulated Dad and that I was just as surprised by the will as everyone else, Mom cut me off. Rachel, I'm disappointed in the person you've become. Your father raised you to be generous and caring, not selfish and greedy. I think you need to seriously consider what kind of legacy you want to leave. Hearing my own mother question my character and integrity was absolutely heartbreaking. I realized that Claire had successfully convinced the most important people in my life that I was a villain who'd stolen from my own family. Beautiful souls, for 6 months I lived with the devastating reality that my own family believed I was a greedy manipulator who'd stolen my father's inheritance. I tried to defend myself, but every conversation just made things worse. So I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to investigate exactly what had happened with Dad's estate and prove my innocence once and for all. I realized that I needed professional help to uncover the truth about what had really happened with Dad's will and estate planning. I hired a private investigator named Marcus Williams who specialized in estate fraud and family financial disputes. Marcus had worked on dozens of cases involving inheritance manipulation, document forgery, and family financial crimes. Rachel, Marcus told me during our first meeting, if your sister is as manipulative as you describe, and if she's this desperate to discredit you, there's probably much more to this story than a simple inheritance dispute. Marcus suggested that we investigate not just the circumstances around Dad's will, but also Claire's financial situation and her interactions with Dad during his final months. In my experience, people who make these kinds of accusations are often projecting their own guilty behavior onto others, Marcus explained. Marcus started by examining Dad's financial records from the year before his death. What we discovered was shocking and heartbreaking. Dad's bank statements showed multiple large withdrawals over his final 8 months, totaling almost $125,000 in cash that was unaccounted for. These withdrawals had been made using Dad's debit card, but they occurred on days when Dad was either at medical appointments or at home recovering from treatments. Marcus was able to obtain security camera footage from several of the banks where these withdrawals occurred. The footage clearly showed Claire using Dad's debit card to withdraw large amounts of cash, sometimes as much as $8,000 in a single day. When Marcus confronted the bank employees, they confirmed that Claire had been making these withdrawals regularly, claiming they were for Dad's medical expenses and household needs. But Dad's medical insurance covered most of his treatments, and his household expenses were nowhere near the amounts Claire had been withdrawing. Claire had been systematically stealing from Dad while he was sick and vulnerable. Hey beautiful souls, I'm Rachel, and I'm about to tell you the most devastating family betrayal story that literally tore apart 3 generations of our family. When my father died and left me his $850,000 estate, my older sister Claire manipulated our entire family into believing I was a greedy, selfish daughter who didn't deserve our father's money. She turned my own mother against me, convinced my aunts and uncles I was lying about Dad's wishes, and even got my cousins to stop speaking to me. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. While Claire was playing the victim and turning everyone against me, she was secretly forging legal documents, bribing witnesses, and stealing from our father's estate. By the time I exposed her schemes, Claire had lost her marriage, her children's respect, her job, and her freedom. Oh, and that perfect family reputation she'd spent 42 years building? Completely destroyed in front of everyone she'd ever known. This story has everything: sibling rivalry, inheritance fraud, family manipulation, and the kind of revenge that destroyed not just one person, but an entire family's trust in each other. Y'all ready for this chaos? Because this is how my sister's greed turned our loving family into a battlefield. Alright gorgeous souls, let me explain the family dynamics that made this betrayal so devastating, because understanding who my sister Claire was to our family is crucial to understanding how she almost got away with destroying my life. I'm 35 years old, and up until 18 months ago, I thought I had this tight-knit, loving family. My older sister Claire is 42, and she's always been what you'd call the golden child in our family. Claire married her high school sweetheart David when she was 22, had 3 beautiful children, and became this perfect suburban mom who hosted every holiday, organized every family reunion, and seemed to have her entire life together. Claire worked as a real estate agent and was incredibly successful. She'd won awards, had her picture in the local newspaper multiple times, and everyone in our hometown knew her as this accomplished, family-oriented woman who could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was kind of the opposite. I moved to Seattle after college to work in tech, stayed single longer than my family thought I should, and only visited home for major holidays. I wasn't irresponsible or problematic, but I definitely wasn't the traditional family-focused daughter that Claire was. Our father, Robert, was 68 when he passed away from a heart attack last year. Dad had been a successful contractor who'd built up a really nice nest egg over the years. He owned his house outright, had a healthy investment portfolio, and had always been smart with money. For as long as I can remember, Claire had been the one who took care of everyone in our family. When Dad's health started declining, Claire was the one who drove him to doctor appointments, helped him organize his medications, and made sure he was eating properly. Our mother, Linda, is 66 and has always relied heavily on Claire for everything. Claire did Mom's grocery shopping, helped her with technology problems, and was basically like a second mother to her own mother. Claire was also the family organizer. She planned birthday parties, arranged family vacations, and was the person everyone called when they needed help with anything. She was genuinely loved and respected by everyone in our extended family. I, on the other hand, was seen as the career-focused daughter who'd chosen work over family. It wasn't that anyone disliked me, but I definitely wasn't as central to the family's daily life as Claire was. When family members would talk about us, they'd always say things like, "Claire is such a devoted daughter," and "Rachel is doing so well in her career." The implication was clear: Claire was the good daughter, and I was the successful but distant one. But here's what the family didn't know: despite living far away, I had an incredibly close relationship with my father. Dad and I talked on the phone every Sunday for at least an hour. We'd discuss everything from politics to sports to his memories of building his business from nothing. Dad was incredibly proud of my career success, and he'd often tell me how impressed he was that I'd built a life for myself in a new city. "You've got that entrepreneurial spirit, Rachel," he'd say. "You remind me of myself when I was starting my business." During his final year, when Dad's health was getting worse, I started visiting home much more frequently. I'd fly in for long weekends just to spend time with him, and we'd have these deep conversations about his life, his regrets, and his hopes for the future. Dad would often talk about his estate planning and his wishes for after he was gone. He'd tell me things like, "I want to make sure your mother is taken care of, but I also want to reward the child who I think will use the money wisely and honor my memory." Dad had always been impressed by my financial responsibility. I'd paid off my student loans early, bought my own condo, and had been saving money consistently since I started working. He'd compare this to Claire, who despite her successful career, was always spending money on expensive vacations, new cars, and home renovations. "Claire is wonderful," Dad would say, "but she's never learned the value of saving money. She spends everything she earns and then some. You've shown me that you understand how to build wealth, not just spend it." Based on these conversations, I had reason to believe that Dad might leave me a larger portion of his estate than Claire. But I honestly never pushed him on the subject. I was just grateful for our close relationship and the time we had together. Claire, meanwhile, had always assumed that she would inherit the bulk of Dad's estate because she was the older child and had been more involved in his daily care. In family conversations, Claire would make comments like, "When Dad passes away, I'll probably need to help Mom manage the estate since she's not good with financial matters." Claire also talked about her plans for Dad's house, mentioning how she might renovate it or whether it would be better to sell it and invest the money for Mom's future care. The assumption throughout the family was that Claire, as the responsible older daughter, would naturally inherit most of Dad's assets and take care of distributing them fairly among family members. I never contradicted these assumptions because I didn't want to create family drama while Dad was still alive. I figured we'd deal with whatever his will said after he passed away. Dad's heart attack was completely unexpected. He'd been having some minor health issues, but nothing that suggested he was in immediate danger. Claire was the one who found him when she came over for their weekly dinner together. She called 911, but it was too late, Dad was gone. The next few days were a blur of funeral planning, family gatherings, and overwhelming grief. Claire took charge of all the arrangements, which everyone appreciated since I was flying back and forth from Seattle and Mom was too devastated to make decisions. Claire organized a beautiful funeral service that perfectly honored Dad's memory. She gave a touching eulogy about what a wonderful father and grandfather he'd been, and how his legacy of hard work and family devotion would live on through his children and grandchildren. During this time, Claire was incredibly supportive of me and Mom. She made sure we had everything we needed, coordinated with relatives who were traveling for the funeral, and handled all the logistics that come with losing a family member. I was genuinely grateful for Claire's support during this difficult time, and I felt closer to my sister than I had in years. But that closeness was about to be shattered when we learned about Dad's will. 2 weeks after Dad's funeral, we met with his attorney, Mr. Peterson, for the reading of the will. I expected this to be a straightforward meeting where we'd learn that Dad had left his estate to Mom and Claire, with maybe a small inheritance for me. But what Mr. Peterson read that day shocked everyone in the room and set off a chain of events that would destroy our family forever. Mr. Peterson began by reading the smaller bequests. Dad had left some money to his church, some family heirlooms to various relatives, and his vintage car collection to his brother. Then came the major inheritance announcements. To my beloved wife Linda, I leave our family home and $200,000 from my investment accounts, which should provide for her comfortable retirement. Mom nodded, seeming satisfied with this arrangement. To my daughter Claire, I leave $150,000 and my share of the family cabin in the mountains, recognizing her dedication to our family and her role as a loving mother and daughter. Claire smiled, clearly pleased with her inheritance. Then Mr. Peterson continued, to my daughter Rachel, I leave the remainder of my estate, including all remaining investment accounts, my business assets, and my life insurance policies, totaling approximately $500,000. The room went completely silent. I was stunned. I had no idea Dad's estate was worth so much, and I certainly hadn't expected to inherit the majority of it. But Claire's reaction was immediate and explosive. That can't be right, Claire said, her voice rising. Dad wouldn't have left Rachel more money than me. I'm the one who took care of him. I'm the one who was here every day. Rachel barely visited. Asterisk.